Welcome to another podcast. I am so stoked to have this dude sitting here right next to me. This one's going to be fun for a number of reasons because this guy, Andrew Mikkelsen, he is a fighter, an MMA fighter. And the way we met is actually pretty nuts. It's funny. In fact, I'm just going to share right now how I met this guy, and then I'm going to go further into who he is and what he's about. So for like 2 weeks straight, at the same time, he works across the way, from the Gigg office at Manovo, right, where you're currently employed. And for whatever reason, we're on the same cycle for, using the restroom. And, I don't know how it is with girls in the restroom, but like if you see a dude and I say, "What's up, dude?" We're standing there, and all of a sudden we just hit it off, became buddies, and I asked him what he was up to. He asked me what I was up to. And then one day he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm fighting on Friday." And I'm like, "You're fighting?" He's like, "Yeah, dude, I'm fighting up at the McAfee Center." And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
And he was fighting in the amateur title for the Fierce League or whatever, right?
Fierce Fighting Championships.
Yeah. And I'm like, "Well, I'm coming.
Yeah.
I'm coming, dude." Anyway, that's how we met. All right, Michelle, don't like girls. There's like a cycle, right? Actually, we're not going to go there.
Schedule.
But like
Let's
my daughter,
not say cycle. Let's say schedule.
Like my wife and my daughter, and then my daughter's friends are all.
Yeah.
They're all like they have that time where they're temporarily insane. Am I allowed to say that? Okay. But we as men, we have the same cycle for, needing to use a restroom, and that's how we became homeboys. But
there we go.
Anyway, your story is awesome. He was a high school, and did you play soccer in high school? No, you're just a kicker.
Never stepped foot on a soccer field.
Yeah, he played football and was a kicker for BYU, Oklahoma State,
Oregon State.
Yeah. Oregon State.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm struggling here, but knew deep down that he was meant to kick people's butts. How long have you been in fighting? How long have you been fighting now?
Been fighting a little over 2 years. Yeah.
I mean, how the heck? You have to be a special dude to just. I want to fight. What was it that got you into it? I mean, were you an MMA fan? Were you watching the UFC? How did you get into it?
You know what? I think all of us have a little bit of it in us, and it's just a matter of pulling it out. It's a primal thing. But yes, to answer your question, grew up loving the UFC. Funny enough, I didn't wrestle in high school. In hindsight, I wish I did. Would have really helped with my fighting career. But I did wrestle in middle school, and our middle school coach was a guy named Chael Sonnen. So any UFC fans out there are going to know Chael. He was kind of the Conor McGregor before Conor McGregor burst onto the scenes. He was the most eloquent trash talker in the game.
Eloquent.
Yeah.
Trash talker.
And it was funny because we'd be wrestling, and then other coaches would say, "Everybody tune in. Coach Chael's fighting on ESPN this Saturday night." And we're like, "What the heck?" And so that was my first exposure to the UFC, was actually watching my coach fight. He was kind of up and comer. And then I ended up not sticking with wrestling and focused on baseball and football in high school. But after high school, my older brother, started training in MMA. And funny enough, he trained for 6 months or a year or so, and then took his debut fight the night before he got set apart to leave on his mission.
No way.
Yeah.
No
kind of ballsy, kind of stupid, but it ended up working out pretty good for him. Yeah. So he got the KO finish, didn't have a scratch on him. And the whole family went up to some event center in like Seattle, and we watched him KO a guy. And then the very next morning, he was up bright and early with his shirt and tie on, going to get set apart.
Man.
We dropped him off at the airport, and off he went. But that was like when the seed was planted. I was like, oh my gosh, my brother's a punk. I beat his butt all day. Just kidding. He was my older brother. He used to beat up on me.
I mean, that's what we do as brothers, right?
That's
so
right.
I have 3 brothers,
Right.
and we beat the piss out of each other, like
Right.
growing up. Like
Yeah.
that, like you said, it's kind of just who we as young men, boys, turn into men. You just still have that in you, and I have so much respect for fighters. I'm a huge fan of boxing. Huge. Have been since I was a little kid. I've talked about it on previous podcasts, but it really is you against the world in many cases. Like, I'm a huge Rocky fan, huge Creed fan, and Warrior is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of my favorites,
awesome.
right? So
it's a tearjerker.
It is a tearjerker. What a cool story that was. But anyway,
Who's your favorite boxer?
Right now?
Yeah.
he just lost to Tank the other night. I've really been enjoying watching Ryan Garcia.
Yeah. Do you know Vasily Lomachenko?
Yeah. My son is a fan of his.
Oh, he's sick.
Yeah,
he's my favorite right now.
Yeah.
He's fun to watch.
There's a couple really, really good ones. But, but I was raised back in the day watching Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, George Foreman.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So, but it takes will and power to fight. I mean, boxing, UFC or MMA takes it to another level.
Yeah.
I mean, there's similarities, but there's differences. Who fought recently? Was it Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather? Did they fight?
It wasn't super recent. That was a couple of years ago.
Was it?
They did fight. Yeah.
And Conor
match.
competed, but he didn't beat him. I mean, it's a very different sport,
It
right?
is. Yeah.
So how much boxing are you? So what? Actually, let's get into what kind of fighting do you focus on? There's grappling, there's jiu-jitsu. And I know that you worked with Court McGee, who's a freaking stud, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about your training process and so on, and then I'm going to get into. We'll move towards this, what I'm currently wearing.
Okay.
Anyway, but tell me about it.
Sounds good. Well, yeah. After my time at BYU, I was kind of sitting around. I was focusing on my career, and then just decided to give fighting a try. I was getting a dad bod, and I needed to do something competitive again.
You do not have a dad bod now, dude. You're looking
not anymore. I'm hitting the gym. But
good,
my brother who fought that I watched growing up moved out to Utah and was going around testing out different gyms. And he went to a couple of different spots, met the coaches, met the guys on the fight team, went to some sparring. And then he went to a local gym here. It's actually in Provo called Agima Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. And he went to one of their fight team practices, and he came back and was like really impressed with the coaches and really impressed with the quality of the fight team, the level of guys that were training out of there. And then he just invited me to tag along. Never trained before. My only exposure was grown up. Like, he was obviously training, and I was obviously interested. So we used to just throw boxing gloves on and beat the crap out of each other in the backyard. And he actually knew what he was doing. But he was cool enough. Like, we would drill and kind of train a little bit. So I had, I would say, super minimal striking experience and then a little bit of wrestling from like middle school.
Right.
But I would say that I walked into the gym day one kind of blank slate, which is cool because then the coaches get to
they can work with you.
Yeah, they get to mold you and teach you proper
Look at
technique.
your strengths and say, this is what you should focus on.
Yeah, but it's a little atypical from most guys that come into the MMA sport. Usually they've got a background in something. They were like high-level wrestlers in high school or college, or they, grew up doing some striking discipline like boxing or kickboxing or Muay Thai. But I kind of went in there blank slate. So to answer your question, what do we focus on when we train? Court McGee, obviously super well-rounded fighter.
Oh, yeah. He's got a big one coming up soon. Doesn't he? A big fight coming up?
Next week. Yeah, he's fighting Matt Brown, who is kind of a legend in the sport. And so is Court. So it's kind of the clash of two titans.
Is it in Vegas or North Carolina? Where's it at?
It's in North Carolina. It's in Charlotte.
Nice.
I'm going to try and find a way to get out there for that.
Man, maybe I'll go with you, dude.
Let's do it. Court can get us tickets, I think.
Court, we're depending on you.
Court.
Okay, so Court, well-rounded fighter, you were saying.
Well-rounded fighter, and then our head coach is a guy named Dana Aristizabal. So the Gracies are like the godfathers of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, yeah.
And in the Gracie inner sanctum is a guy named Pedro Sauer, who is kind of just as noteworthy in the Jiu-Jitsu world as the Gracies. He, I believe, was chasing a girl, but through happenstance just ended up in Provo and opened up a jiu-jitsu gym. And Dane Aristizabal, our head coach, was one of his first black belts.
Way.
Started training with him when he was like a middle schooler. So this dude is like, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, one of the cream of the crop. And so he and Court work together, coaching the gym. He helps Court get ready for his fights. He corners him for his fights. And then we have like the privilege of being training partners for Court.
No way.
And what better way to level up as fast as possible?
I mean, no doubt, dude.
Than train with like a UFC legend and also his coach. So we got high-level guys at the gym, a lot of guys that are getting ready to kind of explode on the MMA scene, all just from our little gym here in Provo.
Dude, that is so awesome. I had Jimmer Fredette on, and he talked about how he got really good because he was the young kid playing with older brothers, and like you think it. I think younger brothers have an advantage when they have older brothers that are in sports and so on, or younger athletes get a chance to work with guys that are great because they move quicker. They have to learn. They have to evolve and get better and adapt quickly. So what a blessing for you to have those guys learn from.
Oh, yeah. And typically, if you don't know what you're doing, they don't really invite you to train with the fight team. That's guys that are preparing for fights, actively fighting, guys that are amateurs leveling up to the pro ranks. But my brother, because he's had like 7 fights or 6 fights, he got invited right in to participate with the fight team. And then when he picked me up, we're driving to the gym, and I think that we're just going for like a jiu-jitsu class. He's like, by the way, what we're going to is a fight team practice, so it's all fighters and the coaches. And I'm like, all right, is that cool? Like, do they know that I don't know what I'm doing? He's like, no, I told the coach that I'm bringing you, and he asked what your experience level was, and I lied a little bit, said you had a ton of striking experience, and you were a really good wrestler in high school. Neither of those were true. And he's like, so we're driving to the gym, and he's like, just don't embarrass me, man. Like, I kind of hyped you up to the coaches so that they'd let you come to our fight team practice. I'm like, dude, you set me up for failure. I'm going to go in there and get my ass beat. But sorry for the family watching. My butt
You're
beat.
fine. No, ass is okay.
And then the first guy that I'm sparring with, like double cauliflower ear and stuff.
You're like,
dude,
oh, gee.
this
So
is
do you
about to be
judge?
bad.
Do you judge? The toughness of the fighter across the way by looking at their ears and seeing cauliflower ear? Because anytime my grandpa said, "You see cauliflower ear, you better be ready." Like, this is a dude that brawls, right?
You see cauliflower ear, you should probably just walk away. Probably be ready to turn around and walk. No, cauliflower ear definitely. It kind of like represents your experience and time on the mats, but it's not a perfect science, the cauliflower ear thing. There are guys that just they're not really predisposed to getting it. So there are guys that have been training for decades and have perfect ears. And then some guys, they get it real quick. So there are some guys walking around with cauliflower ear that they've definitely trained, but it's not like they're been doing it for 10 years or something.
Yeah.
So, but it's a good general rule of thumb. Just if they've got cauliflower ear,
yeah, it's interesting.
Don't mess with them.
I learned how to box when I was a kid. Grandpa taught me. I've mentioned this before. My grandpa was a Golden Glove boxer, ranked number 1 in the armed forces back during the wars. I think it was the Korean War that that he was a part of, if I'm not mistaken. But he taught me how to box, and I even still to this day, like if something comes up, I think every guy fantasizes about getting in a brawl if he has to. Right, to protect his lady or his children or whatever. Right. That's just, come on, every guy's going to admit to that. But there's an added level of confidence when you know how to spar or fight. So I have a lot of friends that go and train and learn the art of any of the different techniques or fighting techniques out there. But there's an added level of confidence. Do you have that? And have you ever thought about getting in a fight in public just because something goes wrong or down that you don't like? Have you ever fantasized about that opportunity in front of your wife to defend her or anything like that?
I'm a little bit of a cupcake, man. Like, I am pretty non-confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
No, for real. I consider what I do an athletic competition. That's kind of how I view it. And I do consider it a fight, obviously. It's what we're doing. So it is. There's that primal thing that kind of comes out of you where you're kind of there to brawl, but also I'm looking at it competitively, like, I've got more skill, I'm better, I've got better cardio and endurance, and I'm just going to beat this guy. Yeah. But when it comes to throwing down in the streets, I'm pretty non-confrontational.
But you will chill if you have to.
For sure. But, like, she'll kill me for saying this. We had an incident at the dog park, like, last year where my wife was kind of chirping at a guy, and I was the one pulling her away, like, let's not cause a scene. I'm not trying to throw hands with this guy at the dog park. My wife is more of the feisty one.
That's hilarious.
But I'm pretty non-confrontational. But that being said, you're totally right. Like, having trained, having been in there, won fights, it does give you a little more confidence.
For sure.
Not a little. It gives you a lot more confidence. Sure. And honestly, I think it makes you a nicer, more chill guy. Because the guys that are kind of walking around with their chest puffed out, those are the guys that have the least amount of confidence.
You're
and
so
they don't
right.
want to get checked
Because
they know that they don't have what it takes to back it up. But if you go into any MMA gym, the nicest dudes in the room are the most dangerous dudes in the room.
No doubt.
Like Court, shirt off his back, Dane, our coach, nicest, most relaxed, and they would never get in a street fight. Yeah. Even though they could crush anybody.
Yeah.
It's the guys that are feel like they're lacking a little bit deep down that are the guys that are most chirpy.
It's one of the reasons. So I'm a big comic nerd, but it's one of the reasons I love Hulk. You know, in the early movies or in the early comics, you learn that he had a sensei that taught him how to learn to control his anger, because if he didn't control his anger, he would destroy and ruin everything. And so, you know, he was trained by the sensei. The sensei would slap him, punch him, kick him, call him names to help him, you know, find his chi.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're so right, man. There's a lot more confidence, humility in knowing, you know, how to control that, what's inside of you. Yeah. And that's what I think helps you become what you are. So now let's talk about your fighting career thus far. So you see this, okay? So when Andrew told me about this fight, I'm like, I'm for sure going. And I'm like, you know what? This is my opportunity to introduce the sport to my wife, Mikkel. I thought there was no way that she would go. Yeah. But she's like, yeah, I need a date. These kids are driving me nuts. I'll go to the fight. Let's go. So, you know, I had asked Andrew, I said, you know, how are you doing? He's like, I'm doing pretty good. You know, this is a big one tonight because, you know, I win this, I get the belt, you know? Yeah. So I told my wife, you know, this is a big deal for Andrew. So we go up there, and I got to tell you about my wife. So we get up there. The first fight was two big boys. Yeah. It was a great fight. Yeah. They did a great job. But the two big boys, you know, a little bit slower, you know, boom, boom, making connection. And she was like, wow, this is kind of cool. The fight after those two was one of the most brutal fights I have seen in a long time. Yeah. And it was two young ladies. Yeah. They beat the piss out of each other. Yeah. And it went for like 2 or 3 rounds, if I'm not mistaken. And
it was a fight right before mine?
I think it was the fight right before yours.
Yeah, I think they went to the round 5 because they staged us during the first round of that fight thinking these chicks are throwing hands. This is like a bloody battle out there, so it's going to be over quick. So they staged us quick so that we'd be ready to walk out. Oh. And then it went forever. And so I'm sitting there backstage about ready to like do my walkout. And like 25 minutes later, they're still in there chucking.
Dude, it was vicious. Girl fights are crazy. Yeah. Like I remember in high school, girl fights were way worse than, you know, dude fights. Yeah. Girls do not mess around. Yeah. But these two just warriors. They were awesome. Yeah. They were incredible. Yeah. But it scared my wife. She was like halfway through, she's like, I can't watch this anymore because these girls were just boom, boom. And I think one of the underdog ended up winning it. She got the belt, if I'm not mistaken. The other girl that she beat down, her face looked absolutely mangled. But my wife was like, I don't know if I can do this. So then I believe it was your fight. Yep. So this first guy walks out. I'm like, I think this is Andrew's weight class. The guy walks out and he looks like a mean dude. Like my wife's like, that's who he's fighting. Because I showed my wife a picture of you before the fight, and she's like, he looks like such a nice guy. He didn't look like, you know, he would, you know, hurt a fly. She didn't say that, but, you know, just looks like a nice guy. Well, this dude was mean looking. I know he runs a joint down in Vegas, if I'm not mistaken, and he had the title belt. And so he comes out, you know, like ready to throw down. And then all of a sudden, and I was so stoked that your intro song was Rain of Fire. Was Rain of Fire? Was Johnny Cash?
Ring of Fire, Johnny Cash.
Yeah, Ring of Fire. So what did I say, Rain of Fire? Ring of Fire. Where did that song come from? Did you just love that? Where did you hear it? How did you choose that one?
You know what? My first couple fights, I walked out to some hip hop and, you know, kind of get the vibe going, get the crowd into it. And then I was talking to a teammate one time, and he said, I feel so much more intimidated when a guy walks out to country because the country boys are just tougher and meaner. And I was like, good. I'm a country boy.
That's good.
I'm going to start walking out to like classic country music.
Such a good one.
So that was the there's a little bit of gamesmanship going into the country. So
well, I loved it. And my wife's like, would he play this song? And I said, this is Andrew. And out you walk, you know, smiling, ready to go, but you look focused, right? You look focused. And you got into that ring and pulverized this dude. Like it wasn't even close. And if you get a chance, you need to go and check out this fight. And what's so cool about all this, and by the way, my wife, after your fight, she was so stoked, she didn't want to leave. And I think there was one more fight after you guys, or 2 more? Was there 1 or 2?
Yeah, we were on the main card, so I think there was like 4 fights after us.
Okay. Yeah. Well, she wanted to stay. And she wanted to stay at, you know, the expense of not picking up one of our kids from a house because she was enjoying it. Yeah. And she was so happy, and she like took pride that somehow she was affiliated with Andrew. you know. But it was an awesome, awesome fight, and he walked away with this. I should not be wearing this. It's probably sacrilegious, but the fact is, the dude walked away with the belt, and it's been really, really fun to watch you. And I don't know if you guys know this. So Pat McAfee, who I love, by the way,
Yeah.
he's a riot.
He's the dude.
And the truth is, Andrew, is I saw a little blurb about you. So Pat McAfee, if you don't know who he is, hilarious, amazing, funny podcaster. He's got tons of content you should check out. But he did a
One
little
of the
blurb.
biggest sports shows in the world.
Yeah, I mean, this guy has a show, but he found a tremendous amount of love for this guy because they have a love of kicking, right? So Pat was a kicker, NFL kicker, Colts, I believe, and was a stud. And he heard about this kicker that got into MMA fighting and just loved him and did a blurb on him in one of his shows.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
That was amazing. So I'm not a big social media guy, but that was following a pretty cool knockout victory of mine there at the Maverick Center against a really high-level opponent that was supposed to knock me out. Funny story, like 2 or 3 nights before that fight, I had such a vivid dream. We knew that this guy was a high-level striker, and I had such a vivid dream that he knocked me out. And I was like on the ground and he was celebrating. I was like so devastated that I lost and embarrassed myself in my hometown in front of everybody. And so there was an extra level of jitters and nerves going into that one. But fortunately enough, we got it done in 38 seconds, got the KO victory. And one of my huge advocates, good buddy of mine and teammate, is Johnny Linehan. And he's at every single fight.
Great. He's great.
He's at all my fights in person, supporting me, hyping me up. So Johnny knows that I'm not big into social media, so he's getting clips from the fight and he's tweeting them to Pat McAfee. And Pat McAfee, like you said, kickers are watching out for each other. Has love for the kickers and punter brand. So he retweets it. And I'm a huge fan of Pat McAfee, have been for years, watched his show.
Yeah.
And so I'm out with some buddies eating a steak dinner after the win, and Johnny's lighting me up. Dude, Pat McAfee just retweeted the KO. It was the whole fight because it was a short enough fight. He just retweeted the whole fight. Pat McAfee just retweeted it. It's got over 100,000 views. People are commenting. You have to make a Twitter. And so there, in between,
That's where it all began.
In between bites of steak, I make a Twitter account just so I can thank Pat McAfee for the love and retweeting the fight. And then he messages me back and says, come on our show. We'd love to interview you. So, I got a double dose of love from Pat McAfee.
So cool.
And then he's been a sponsor for all of my fights ever since. So
that is so cool. Well, you definitely need to start getting on social media, bro. Like it's the
it's
brand
a work in
matters.
progress. It's a work in progress. We're working on it.
Yeah,
for sure.
and let me tell you why you need to do this. So one of the boys here in the office, he mentioned, hey, you need to ask Andrew about something that recently came out online. Something about a list about some of the best fighters out there in the world ranked. Do you know anything about this? What is it called? Come on, dude. No, I don't want to hear about no allowed being humble right now. You are not allowed to be humble.
There's an online platform that ranks up and coming fighter prospects, I guess. And so they have like regions of the country where they take all the guys and look at their records and who they've beat and how they've won.
And so where do you rank on this list, Andrew? Let's hear it.
After this most recent fight, I got bumped up to number 1 in the U.S. West. So
number 1. I said to my wife after the fight, I said, this guy's going places. So the next chapter for him is going to be special. And this is why you need to get on social media. This is why you need to start making an effort there, because brands are going to be looking for you. I'm looking for brands to start aligning with you, dude, with what we're doing here at Gigg. But it is so fun seeing that. How do you feel after seeing your name listed as number 1?
I think it's a
Pressure?
cool accomplishment. Yeah, I mean, I've only been training just a little over 2 years, so it's been a really kind of quick climb. But it brings me a lot of optimism and excitement for the future, right? If we were able to get here in 2 years of training, then I think that there's a bright future if I just stick to it. So.
Yeah, man, you're special in there in that ring, and I know that the competition is going to get tougher as you continue to go, but
sure,
your level of confidence and motivation, and the guys you're working with, you have a future, man, and we're all going to be watching you closely. You really do need to give this guy a look. I'll tell you, this last fight. So the first fight that Pat picked up, he was talking about how I don't even think you used your legs once in that fight when you knocked him out. Did you? You were just
no, it was just hands.
Yeah, you were just pop, 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 pop.
Yeah.
However, this last fight, you did use those legs. There is you swept this kid. You sweep kick, boom. This guy hit the ground so flipping hard. You know what I'm talking about, right? The highlight.
Yeah, sure.
Man, it's a good one. It's a good one. Anyway, I know you know how to use those legs, but you're a great fighter all around. The speed is what I find is most interesting.
Yeah.
You knew this dude was a grappler.
Yep.
That was coming into the fight, and he was fighting like hell to try and get a hold of you and take you down, and you moved right out of that. Did you practice that before you got in there in the ring? Was that the big focus?
For sure. So, I mean, he was a last-minute replacement too. So credit to him for nutting up and taking the fight on, I think, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks notice. I was supposed to fight a different guy out of Portland, Oregon, but he had an injury. But doing our research on this guy, knew that he was a high-level grappler. He'd won 3 out of his last 4 fights via submission against other high-level grapplers too. So we knew he was slick. And not that I don't have confidence in my ability to grapple. That's something that's heavily emphasized in our training program.
For sure, it has to be.
But I've had so much success in the striking department in my previous fights that it's like, hey, if that's his strength, then let's play our game and let's implement our strategy. And so anytime he was in trouble and anytime I was touching him up on the feet, you could tell that he was kind of reverting back to where he thought he had the best chance to win. He was shooting takedowns and trying to get me to the mat. And so, yeah, we were practicing takedown defense, sprawling out, getting back to our feet, and going back to work with the hands. And so a couple times with the leg sweep, with a couple other times where I'd hit him and drop him, I just kind of take a step back and invite him to come back to the feet for more.
Yeah. It almost looked like after you swept and put him right on his back, you just step back and we're just like, get up.
Yeah.
Get up, dude.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, well, we're going to be watching you closely. So I always like to end the podcast with what I call whack questions. I'm going to fire off questions and you just quick answer.
Hit me.
Which makes this fun so we can get to know you better. But I'm going to start with, what's the first concert you ever went to?
First concert I ever went to. This is embarrassing.
No, that's what it's supposed to be.
My mom likes classical music, and there's this quartet of like classical music singers. It's called Il Divo. If you're not under the age of 65, you've never heard of them. But if you're over the age of 65, you're probably a fangirl. And so my mom, they were coming to Portland, Oregon. That's where I grew up. I don't claim Portland, but outside of Portland, Oregon, small town. They were coming to Portland, and my mom was like, I'm going to this. And I think she was having a tough time recruiting other people to be interested. I'd never been to a concert before, and so I got kind of tagged along.
Did you enjoy it?
I mean, I was like a middle schooler, and it wasn't my scene really, but I brought the average age down in that stadium by
good for
a
you,
lot.
man. You contributed. That's awesome.
Mostly country concerts since then.
So, country, your favorite genre of music? That was my next question.
Oh, man. I'm kind of like all over the board. I love country. I love hip-hop. I served in the islands, served my mission in Samoa, so I love island reggae.
Oh, yeah. It's good stuff.
It just depends on the mood, man.
Who's your favorite artist right now?
Chris Stapleton.
He's awesome. Yes. And show back there.
Yeah.
You like Morgan Wallen? Is it Waylon Wallen?
Oh, dude, yeah.
My
if I
wife's a
had
big
more
fan.
time to think, he probably would have been in contention for the top spot, too.
Okay. Who is your favorite superhero of all time? Come on,
that's a
you got
tough one, dude. I didn't grow up watching comics.
No?
We grew up watching cowboy movies.
Okay,
so,
who's your favorite cowboy movie? What's your favorite cowboy
Jim
movie?
Craig, Man from Snowy River. If you guys have ever seen Man from
good one.
Snowy River, that was kind of like played weekly at our house growing up.
That is awesome. Do you think you could take Chuck Norris in his prime?
I don't want to be disrespectful, so the answer is absolutely not.
I don't think anyone could beat Chuck Norris in his prime. Bruce Lee couldn't beat him.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Okay. Next question. What is your wife's biggest pet peeve about you? What drives her nuts?
We got to wrap this podcast up. We don't have enough time to talk about pet peeves.
You got to have one, dude. You got to have one.
Oh, man. I think I'm a little bit of a tease, and the problem is if I can tell she's on edge and in a, like, maybe she's tired or just feeling more irritable, that's kind of fuel for me to be even more annoying. So I think just all around being obnoxious, especially when she's like her patience is wearing thin, I kind of I step on the gas a little bit, and I'd say just overall giving her razzle dazzle when she's not in a good mood.
You know, everyone needs to be razzle dazzled.
Yeah.
Especially when they're not in a good mood. But sometimes women don't like that. I've learned that. I kind of do the same thing to my wife. So that's hilarious.
Yeah, I can smell blood in the water, so I just kind of pour it on.
That is awesome. All right. Well, in closing, my last question: what is your favorite cereal? And we have it here for you. It's one of the good ones. One of the good ones. Honey Bunches of Oats.
I love Honey Bunches of Oats, man.
It's so good.
It's not quite like totally caked with sugar, but it's got sweetness
so
in
good.
it. So you kind of you trick yourself into thinking that it's a semi-healthy option when it really isn't, but I slam a whole box of these.
They're so good. They nailed it. I think I think it came out when I was in like junior high as a kid, but it's the realness. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I appreciate you being on.
Yeah.
And we are pulling for you, man. This next stage for you is going to be incredible. You guys need to go and follow this guy. Where can they find you on social media? Because he's about to take it seriously. So where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I still need to log in. I haven't ever logged in. My friend's running my Instagram for me. He's not doing a good job. I will log in though if people come and want to give me a follow. I'm going to start posting more content.
Yes, you need to because you can put some
my
great
friends at
content
Gigg are going to hook it up. And help me out
we
with
are
that.
going to absolutely hook it up. We're gonna start it off with a Gigg campaign that we can create a call to action that Andrew's a part of. And
there we go.
I have some ideas. I have some fun ideas.
Yeah.
Anyway, dude, I thanks so much for being on. It's funny because right before he had his fight, I said, dude, do you have like a celebration? Because I just finished watching the UFC where the dude that knocked out the champ did the arrow. I said, what are you going to do? And he has a very simple celebration, and I was hoping that you could do that to end our podcast today. Take a bow. Boom, 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 boom.
The crowd's going wild, and I just hit him with a little bow.
Thanks for being on, Andrew. Sayonara. Sayonara.